2017, Los Angeles. Just off Sunset Boulevard, a small rock club called The Foundry was packed wall to wall. People had gathered to see 23-year-old metal vocalist Tyler Cain, whose explosive performances had become the talk of the local music scene. Among the crowd sat two men no one seemed to notice. Near the back corner, an older man quietly sipped a cup of coffee, listening to every sound coming from the stage. Across the room, beneath a black cap, sat Ozzy Osbourne. He had slipped into the club unnoticed, hoping to discover new talent and enjoy a night of live music without the attention that usually followed him. When the lights dimmed, Tyler walked onto the stage with complete confidence. The first guitar riff shook the room. For nearly 40 minutes, the audience was captivated. Tyler's voice was powerful, his stage presence electric, and every song ended with thunderous applause. Even Ozzy smiled. The kid's got something, he thought. As the cheering settled, Tyler stepped to the microphone. You know, he said, people always tell me to study the legends. He laughed. But honestly, the Eagles? He shrugged. That's just soft that rock. A few people laughed. Others didn't. The older man with the coffee simply looked up, remaining calm. Tyler continued. If music doesn't hit like a freight train, it's not heavy enough. The room fell silent. Ozzy's smile disappeared. Not because he was offended, but because he'd heard that kind of confidence before. Talent was easy. Humility was harder. Tyler climbed up the stage, shaking hands with excited fans. Certain the night couldn't have gone any better. He thanked everyone for coming. Then he noticed an older man walking toward him. It was Ozzy. The room slowly began to recognize him. Tyler froze. Ozzy smiled and extended his hand. Fantastic performance, he said. Tyler smiled back. Thank you. That means a lot coming from you. Ozzy nodded before glancing toward the quiet man still sitting in the back corner. There's someone I'd like you to meet. Tyler followed Ozzy's gaze, unaware that the next few minutes would change the way he looked at music forever. Tyler stood frozen as the legendary heavy metal icon everyone simply called. Oz extended his hand. You've got a powerful voice, Oz said with a smile. Not many singers can hold a room the way you just did. Tyler couldn't hide his excitement. Thank you. I've looked up to you for years. Oz nodded. Then walk with me. They crossed the club toward the quiet man sitting in the back corner. He calmly placed his coffee on the table and stood to greet them. This is Daniel Hartley, Oz said. Tyler smiled politely, assuming he was just another older musician. Nice to meet you. Daniel returned the smile. I enjoyed your performance. You sing with conviction. Tyler appreciated the compliment, but couldn't resist adding, I'm trying to push rock forward. Some of the old bands just don't have that weight. Daniel asked gently, what do you think makes music heavy? Tyler answered without hesitation. Loud guitars, bigger drums, more aggression. Oz chuckled. I used to think something similar. Tyler looked surprised. Oz continued. The loudest song isn't always the heaviest. Sometimes a single lyric carries more weight than 1,000 amplifiers. Tyler frowned. I don't see how. Daniel looked around the nearly empty club. Most people here won't remember every note you played tonight. Tyler looked confused. But they'll remember how your music made them feel. The words lingered in the silence. For the first time that evening, Tyler wasn't sure he had the right answer. Oz smiled. Tomorrow afternoon, same place. Tyler looked between the two men. Why? Oz adjusted his jacket. Because I'd like to show you something every great musician eventually learns. Without another word, Oz and Daniel walked toward the exit. Tyler watched them disappear into the Los Angeles night, wondering why to respect it. Veterans seemed more interested in asking questions than giving lectures. He had no idea tomorrow would become the most important day of his career. The following afternoon, Tyler arrived at the Foundry long before anyone else. The club was silent, a sharp contrast to the roaring crowd from the night before. A few minutes later, Oz and Daniel walked through the front door. You actually came, Oz said with a smile. I wanted answers, Tyler replied. Daniel placed an old acoustic guitar on a chair. No stage lights, no amplifiers, no audience. Tyler looked confused. Then what's the lesson? Daniel picked up the guitar and played a simple progression. The melody was quiet, but every note seemed to fill the empty room. When he finished, Oz looked at Tyler. What did you hear? Tyler shrugged. A good melody. Daniel smiled. I wrote that after losing someone I loved. The room fell silent. It wasn't written to impress anyone, Daniel continued. It was written because I didn't know how else to carry the pain. Tyler lowered his eyes. For the first time, he wasn't listening to the volume. He was listening to the story. Oz stepped forward. People think heavy music is about distortion and screaming. He shook his head. Real weight comes from honesty. Tyler looked at both men. So, I've been measuring music the wrong way. Oz smiled. Not wrong, just incomplete. Tyler sat quietly, replaying his words from the night before. For the first time in years, he wondered if becoming a great musician meant learning before leading. Oz stood and picked up his coat. Tomorrow, he said, bring one song, not your loudest, your most honest. Tyler nodded. As Oz and Daniel walked out into the afternoon sun, Tyler remained alone with the old acoustic guitar, wondering if he had ever truly written a song from the heart. The next afternoon, Tyler returned to the foundry carrying nothing but an acoustic guitar and a notebook. Oz and Daniel were already waiting. You brought a song? Oz asked. Tyler nodded. I rewrote it 3 times. Daniel smiled. That's usually a good sign. Tyler took a deep breath and sat on a stool in the middle of the empty club. No band? Oz shook his head. No band, no lights, no crowd, just the truth. Tyler closed his eyes and began to play. The melody was simple, but the words were unlike anything he had written before. Instead of anger, they spoke of growing up without his father, of hiding his fears behind loud music, and of chasing applause because silence reminded him of everything he had lost. When the final chord faded, the room remained silent. Tyler slowly looked up. Daniel's eyes were fixed on the floor. Oz smiled quietly. Now that's heavy. Tyler frowned. But I didn't scream. You didn't have to, Oz replied. The song did the shouting for you. Daniel nodded. People may forget how loud a song is, but they'll never forget how it made them feel. For the first time, Tyler understood. He hadn't been writing songs. He'd been building walls. Now, for the first time, he had written a window into his own life. Oz stood and walked toward the stage. In 2 nights, he said, this club is hosting another showcase. I want you to play this song. Tyler looked surprised. Without changing it. Oz smiled. Especially without changing it. As Oz and Daniel headed for the door, Tyler looked down at the notebook in his hands. The pages hadn't just changed his music. They had started changing him. 2 nights later, the foundry was packed once again. Word had spread that Tyler Cain was returning after his explosive performance earlier that week. Many expected another night of thunderous guitars and relentless screams. Backstage, Tyler held his acoustic guitar instead of his usual electric one. His hands were shaking. Oz noticed. Nervous? Tyler smiled. More than I've ever been. Oz placed a hand on his shoulder. Good. It means this one matters. The lights dimmed, and Tyler walked onto the stage. The crowd cheered, expecting another heavy metal performance. Instead, Tyler pulled up a stool. The room fell quiet. He looked around the club before speaking. A few nights ago, I thought being loud made music powerful. He paused. I was wrong. I wrote this song because someone reminded me that the heaviest music doesn't always come from the biggest amplifiers. It comes from the truth. He began to play. The club was completely silent. There were no crushing guitar riffs, no screaming vocals, just Tyler's voice and an honest story. As the song continued, people who had come expecting chaos found themselves listening to every word. Some smiled, others wiped away tears. Near the back of the room, Daniel looked toward Oz. Without saying a word, they both knew Tyler had crossed an invisible line. He was no longer performing to impress people. He was performing to connect with them. When the final chord faded, silence filled the club for several seconds. Then the audience rose to its feet. The applause was louder than it had been 2 nights earlier. Not because the music was louder, because it meant something. Tyler stepped off the stage, still trying to process what had happened. Oz met him with a smile. I told you, the truth has a sound of its own. Tyler nodded, and I finally heard it. But Oz had one final lesson waiting. One that Tyler would never forget. Several weeks later, the foundry hosted another showcase. The room was packed, but this time people weren't just talking about Tyler Cain's powerful voice. They were talking about his songs. Backstage, Tyler tuned his guitar as Oz and Daniel walked in. You look different, Oz said with a smile. Tyler laughed. I don't think I've changed. Daniel smiled. You have. The last time we met, you wanted people to remember how loud you were. And now, Tyler looked down at the notebook that held his newest lyrics. Now, I want them to remember how my music made them feel. Oz nodded proudly. That's the difference between chasing applause and leaving a legacy. When Tyler stepped onto the stage, the audience welcomed him with warm applause. He looked across the room and smiled. I used to believe great musicians proved themselves by tearing down the artists who came before them. He paused. I've learned that every generation builds on the one before it. If we respect the past, we give the future something stronger to stand on. The audience listened quietly. Tyler performed his new song. It wasn't the loudest song he'd ever written. It wasn't the fastest, but it was the most honest. As the final note faded, the audience rose to its feet. The applause seemed to last forever. Near the back of the club, Oz and Daniel exchanged a smile. Our work here is done, Daniel said softly. Oz chuckled. No, it's his turn now. Without saying goodbye, the two legends quietly walked toward the exit. Tyler looked up just in time to see them disappear into the Los Angeles night. He smiled. He understood. Some teachers don't stay forever. They simply leave you with the lesson you needed most. Years later, whenever young musicians asked Tyler what made a song truly heavy, he never spoke about amplifiers, distortion, or volume. He always gave the same answer. A song becomes heavy when it carries the truth, and every time he said those words, he remembered two men who changed his life in a quiet club just off Sunset Boulevard. Not with criticism, not with anger, but with wisdom.